My last story here is about me. So the reason why I'm so interested in grit is because I used to not have any. So I grew up here, somewhat privileged, went to all the right schools, and yet I was successful without grit. So if it was easier, if I knew I could shine, I would do it. And so as a result, I was able to fool a lot of people. But the one thing that really got me was this eating disorder called bulimia. So at 15, two girls at Cathedral showed me how to purge my food. And I thought it was something I could just do whenever I wanted to. It was just a habit. I could give it, take it or leave it. And the fact of the matter was, because I come from a history and a legacy of addiction, it grabbed me and it ran my life. And for 7 years, I spiraled down and kept it hidden and was fairly certain by the time I hit my 20s that I was going to die from it, because at that time, nobody got better. In fact, nobody knew anybody who had gotten better. Nobody even talked about this. So I know I was a woman who didn't have grit, and I was ready to give up on it until I was at a meeting in Baltimore in early 1984, a 12-step self-help group for compulsive eaters, and I heard a woman across the room from me say something I'd never heard before. She said, "My name is Betsy, and I'm recovering from bulimia one day at a time." And I remember every cell in my body turned towards her. I lit up. I had never heard all of those words in one sentence. I didn't know anybody got better. I also didn't know anybody even talked about it, even though I went through Harvard and knew tons of people around me. I was a swimmer at Harvard, and we're the athletes who were studied who came up with the female triad finding that is so common now. Everyone knows it's bone density and menstruation and eating disorders. That's what female athletes get. Well, I was part of that study. So I saw it all around me. But nobody was getting better and nobody talked about it. But this woman, Betsy, I looked at her and she had blonde hair and she kind of looked like me. And I remember I lit up and I thought, if she can do it, I can do it. And in that moment, I was filled with hope. And that hope changed my life. And I said to myself, why not? If she can do it, why not me? And in that moment, I chose to live. And in that moment, I decided to save my life. And in that moment, I made a decision that I was going to become a gritty person. I didn't know the name for it, but I decided I just wasn't going to quit. I wasn't going to let this thing kill me. And so in 1988, I wrote the first book ever written by anyone who overcame eating disorders. And so this was around the time Karen Carpenter died, and all anyone knew was death. But I said, I want everyone to know that you can live and you can have hope. And so that was an interesting chapter in my life. The New York Times Sunday Book Review called my book revolting. So, I mean, who would want to read this book? Well, a lot of people wanted to read that book, it turned out. But the reason I've been so interested in grit is because by setting a hard goal, how do you save your own life? And by deciding not to be a quitter, and by building a team around me, and by turning to people who were light-giving, who showed me the way when I didn't have the way, that's why I was able to recover and have a high-quality life. That's why I'm happy. That is the biggest achievement of my whole life, and because of it, I'm a better person. And so when you fail, sometimes you really succeed. As J.K. Rowling said, you know what? Sometimes you have nothing left to lose and you just have nowhere to go but up. And so all of us can make these choices. So if any of you have time, I encourage you to go to my challenge, the Authentic Grit Challenge at www.authenticgrit. Sign up, and then I'll send you a few questions every 3 weeks or so about changing the channel, challenging yourself to say why not. What we're finding through the research that's rolling in is that people are becoming grittier. Their grit score does change. Your grit score will change if you choose to do some things very deliberately. So finally, the very last thing I want to say is that when it all comes down to what is it that you can't forget, what is the thing that if you walk out of here and you decide you're going to play bigger in life, you're going to set hard goals, you're going to choose happiness, you're going to surround yourself with a positive team, you're going to role model this for other people, you're going to be contagiously positive and gritty, what is it that you have to remember at the end of the day? And I found this commencement speech by Admiral McCrae Craven. Some of you may have heard of it, seen it. It went viral last year. It's the University of Texas commencement speech. And in it, he talked about the Navy SEAL training. He was the head of Navy SEALs. And he talked about 10 ways to change the world. And so the last point is really what encapsulates everything I'm saying today. And this is what he said: if you want to change the world, this is the one thing you cannot do.
Finally, in SEAL training, there's a bell. A brass bell that hangs in the center of the compound for all the students to see. All you have to do to quit is ring the bell. Ring the bell, and you no longer have to wake up at 5 o'clock. Ring the bell, and you no longer have to be in the freezing cold swims. Ring the bell, and you no longer have to do the runs, the obstacle course, the PT, and you no longer have to endure the hardships of training. All you have to do is ring the bell to get out. If you want to change the world, don't ever, ever ring the bell.
And that's where I wanted to end. So don't ring the bell. Whatever it is you choose to walk out of here and do differently, I hope I've touched all of you. I know we have some time here. I'd love to take some questions. But whatever you choose to go after, and I hope every one of you goes after something a little bit differently, with a little bit more gusto, a little bit more zest, a little bit more grit. Don't quit. Don't quit, because it's in the decision not to quit that everything changes, and that's a promise I can make to you. So thank you very much, and I'm available for questions, and I have some workshop things I would love to try with you too.